An ancient and advanced civilization capable of creating structures and artifacts that still appear incredible and mysterious today. Did it truly exist in an ancient past? And if it did exist, why do we not have irrefutable evidence of its existence? These are questions often posed by viewers watching our videos, but perhaps they start from a wrong assumption. That is, are we really certain that there is no evidence or at least clear and precise indications of the existence in an ancient past of a technology or an ancient wisdom that has been lost? Our opinion is that there are actually multiple pieces of evidence and indications indicating that in a distant past, there existed a civilization much more advanced than is commonly accepted. And in this video, we will try to answer these interesting questions, and we will try to do so by analyzing specific elements. In this video, we will try to answer these questions, and to do so, we must identify those elements that are called technological markers, that is, those artifacts that reveal a technology not possessed by the inhabitants of a certain place at a specific historical moment. Well, but before embarking on this fascinating journey, as we always do, and if you haven't already, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work and not miss our new videos. Ancient Egypt, an enigmatic civilization full of mysteries. Even today, looking at the magnificence of the pyramids, we remain amazed by their grandeur, and the debate on who and how they were built is still open. And there are many hypotheses that researchers have put forward over the years. Who built them? What were they used for? Could a relatively primitive people create this kind of work? And what about the pyramids of Cuzco? The precision with which the carvings of the enormous stone blocks were made leaves one speechless and opens up 1,000 possibilities and questions. Our list could go on with Göbekli Tepe, a discovery that completely rewrites everything we thought we knew about our past. If these are just a couple of examples of places rich in charm and mystery, in support of those who believe that an ancient civilization existed in a very distant past, there is vast literature. The story of an ancient catastrophe that destroyed the ancient world is present in almost all cultures of the world. The story of ancient sages, bearers of knowledge, who travel the world to spread their knowledge to those peoples who survived a global catastrophe. We find it in the texts of various cultures from around the world. For example, they are called Anunnaki in the culture of ancient Mesopotamia, descendants of Horus in ancient Egypt, or Watchers in the populations of South America. And that something extraordinary really happened in the relatively recent history of our planet is also confirmed by official science. Ice core drilling in Antarctica has indeed confirmed that about 13,000 years ago, there was a sudden increase in dust, metals, and other debris in the atmosphere of our planet. All elements that would seem to indicate an event of great impact, like the fall of a large asteroid. This tremendous impact would have determined, in addition to a destructive event on a global scale, a radical climate change with a sudden cooling that would have caused the mass extinction of numerous species of animals and plants. This period, called the Younger Dryas, would have lasted about 1,000 years. Then suddenly, for a still unexplained event, in the following 100 years, the climate would have warmed up and stabilized at today's levels. So, if an advanced civilization existed before these tragic events, would we find traces of it today? As we mentioned earlier, if we look at ancient texts, we actually find various references and clues that suggest that all this could have been possible. An ancient civilization could indeed have been destroyed by these terrible events, but it did not completely extinguish. The survivors traveled the world and tried to transmit their knowledge to all those less evolved peoples who had survived the catastrophe. We find testimonies of this kind, as we know, in the ancient testament of Christian tradition, in mythology and sacred Indian texts, in the Sumerians, and in the myth of Atlantis mentioned by Plato. In the Ramayana, the sacred Hindu text, we indeed find written,
"The sky turned red, and the earth trembled. A deluge of fire fell from the sky. The whole world was destroyed."
We find the same thing in the Popol Vuh, the Maya traditions book, where the destruction of the first world is narrated.
There came a flood that destroyed the earth. The sky darkened and the earth trembled. Men dispersed and their language became confused.
If these are just two examples of the mythological tradition of two ancient world cultures, we find testimonies of comets, extinct animals, and floods in rock art representations from around the world, such as in France in the Lascaux Cave, in Val Camonica in Italy, in the petroglyphs of Sego Canyon in the United States, or in some pillars found at the site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. The precise dating of these engravings is uncertain, but their association with the Younger Dryas era is based on factors such as style, content of the engravings, and dating. Some of these engravings have indeed been dated using radiocarbon dating techniques and have provided a precise age of their creation, which perfectly coincides with the period of the Younger Dryas. As we have just seen, testimonies that tell of a civilization preceding the known ones are numerous, as is the representation of a catastrophic event that put an end to this civilization. But as we said at the beginning of the video, today our research focuses on the analysis of those technological markers that prove the existence of superior technology, in times when it was not possible for this to be widespread. So let's go back to Egypt and head to Saqqara. At Saqqara, we find the Djoser pyramid, which is considered by Egyptologists to be the oldest surviving Egyptian pyramid to this day. The pyramid is located northeast of Memphis, the ancient capital of Egypt, and according to official reconstructions, it would date back to the 3rd dynasty, around 2686 BC. Saqqara is also famous for the Serapeum, an underground temple dedicated to the god Apis. Inside the galleries below the temple, enormous sarcophagi made of granite blocks weighing up to 70 tons have been found. These were discovered in 1851 by Auguste Mariette, a French archaeologist, and according to official reconstructions, the sarcophagi were supposed to contain the bodies of embalmed bulls. But in reality, nothing has ever been found inside them, and the site remains shrouded in mystery to this day. But the sarcophagi of the Saqqara Serapeum are not the only mystery present at the site. Something much simpler and in some ways banal puts Egyptologists' reconstructions in crisis and could represent that technological marker we are searching for. We are referring to the vases of Pharaoh Djoser, a collection of about 40,000 vases that the ruler of the Nile country, famous for the stepped pyramid of Saqqara built for him by the architect Imhotep, would have put together around 2800 BC. But what is so special about these vases? Before analyzing the technical data that make these artifacts unique, it is essential to remember that throughout its history, humanity has predominantly shaped vases using malleable materials such as clay, terracotta, and blown glass. In some cases, more resistant materials have been used, such as alabaster, which however remains relatively easy to work with. Generally, artisans have used the lathe to give the vases their characteristic rounded shape that we all know. The peculiarity of these artifacts found at Saqqara is that they are not made with this type of materials. But most of them are made of granite and even diorite, and this, which may seem like a trivial detail, completely changes the issue. To understand the importance of the matter, we must resort to the Mohs scale, that is, the scale that classifies the hardness of stones. This scale was devised by the German geologist Friedrich Mohs in 1812 and uses 10 reference minerals, each of which can scratch minerals with lower hardness and can be scratched by those with higher hardness. Hardness in this scale is defined by how a mineral can resist abrasion or deformation and ranges from the lowest value of 1, corresponding to talc, to the highest value of 10, attributed to diamond, the hardest known natural mineral. The scale follows this order. From softest to hardest we find talc, gypsum, calcite, fluorite, apatite, orthoclase feldspar, quartz, topaz, corundum, and finally diamond. Diorite, which is the material used to make the vases found in Djoser's collection, is between the 6th and 7th positions on the Mohs scale. To get an idea of the hardness of the material these vases are made of, just think that steel is at the 4th position on this scale. This means that a steel tip is unable to scratch diorite. Clearly, we are talking about hardness and not resistance. It must be clear that if we hit a diorite vase with a hammer, it breaks into 1,000 pieces, whereas this does not happen for an object made of steel. So hardness is another thing, and in the case of diorite, even today we would have difficulty making similar artifacts. Diorite, or even granite, is often used to make statues or sculptures, but making a vase, although it may seem simpler, is a much more complex operation. If it is already complicated to work with these materials from the outside, working with such hard materials from the inside, think inside a vase, is almost impossible. If, as for Djoser's vases, they appear with a narrow and elongated neck while the body is wide, even today it is impossible to understand how a primitive people could have worked them. The only possibility is that tools equipped with tips or brushes made of quartz, emerald, or diamond were used. According to archaeologists, however, the ancient Egyptians, who lived thousands of years ago, did not have such advanced tools. Furthermore, for vases characterized by a very narrow neck or a body particularly wide compared to the neck, even this technique would not have been applicable. Supposing, hypothetically, that the skilled Egyptian craftsmen had dedicated themselves with extraordinary dedication to the use of quartz powder to shape the vases, the enigma remains of how they could carve the inside of the vases themselves. It becomes evident that due to intrinsic technical limitations, the empty space inside the vase could not have exceeded the diameter of the vase neck. But this is not the only problem encountered. Observing the vases, it is noticed that they have a perfect roundness, like that given by master potters using the lathe. But achieving such perfect roundness by sculpting stone is an impossible task. In addition to this, what is also surprising are the extremely thin incisions that, according to the opinion of many experts, would have been made with tiny tips of an incredible size of 0.12 millimeters. In short, Djoser's vases are an extraordinary puzzle, and at this point, it is inevitable to ask why the ancient Egyptians made everyday objects with such hard and difficult to work with stone. Did these objects have purposes and uses unknown to us that required the use of this material? Another peculiar aspect is that the oldest vases, those attributed to the most remote dynasties, are made of diorite, while those from more recent dynasties are made of softer materials, as if the technique or purpose for which the oldest vases were made had been lost. But this is not a new aspect in ancient Egyptian culture. We also find it in the pyramids, where we observe that those possessing more complex craftsmanship are attributed to the oldest dynasties. Just think of the Great Pyramid of Giza, while those attributed to more recent dynasties appear much less elaborate. And many of them today remain nothing but piles of stones. And if we were to admit that the pyramids are not, as Egyptologists claim, the tombs in which the pharaohs were buried, but that they had functions unknown to us, it is plausible that Djoser's vases are not simple containers, but that their incredible peculiarities had specific motivations of which we are unaware. And this would explain another unclear fact: the place where these extraordinary artifacts were found. The Pyramid of Djoser stands out from the others for its unique stepped shape, a true anomaly compared to the regular pyramids we are accustomed to. But the aspect that makes it even more enigmatic, and that many are not aware of, is the complex underground complex hidden beneath it. A network of galleries extends for about 6 kilometers, branching out from a central chamber located 28 meters deep and with a diameter of about 7 meters. Egyptologists believe that these underground chambers and rooms were used for the burial of Pharaoh Djoser. But needless to say, the pharaoh's body has never been found inside them, nor artifacts that could unequivocally suggest that this structure had a funerary purpose. Something else entirely was found in its depths, precisely in 1920, when the exploration of the deepest shafts, about 50 meters underground, led to the discovery of an unexpected treasure: the 40,000 stone vases of various shapes and sizes we have been talking about until now. These artifacts have remained perfectly preserved for thousands of years, but why hide them in the depths below the pyramid? What were these vases really used for? The mystery of their function remains unresolved to this day. The hypothesis of Egyptologists is that these were intended to accompany the pharaoh into the afterlife, providing him with everything he needed. However, the presence of names engraved on each vase, including those of Djoser's predecessors and minor characters, complicates the matter. Why so many vases, and why positioned at such a depth? The 7th level where they were found, according to Egyptologists, was supposed to protect them from potential tomb robbers. This explanation leaves many doubts and perplexities, especially if we accept the Egyptologist's thesis that the tomb robbers still managed to steal the pharaoh's body but left the vases in place. The real problem is that the craftsmanship of these vases not only leaves us puzzled, but it is difficult to imagine that they were made with the technologies of the time. These artifacts could be the result of advanced knowledge pre-existing Pharaoh Djoser, who simply safeguarded the secret and did so by storing them in a remote location several meters below the stepped pyramid. These 40,000 stone vases could be witnesses of a distant era, and the solution to an unresolved mystery. A mystery that could hide the existence of an ancient civilization, a civilization told in the mythology and sacred texts of many cultures, and just waiting to be discovered.
In front of the Pillars of Hercules lies an island in the sea, about 5,000 stadia in size, distant from Libya, a voyage of many days to the west. It is said to have once been dedicated to Poseidon and to have had Atlas as its king, from whom the island itself and the surrounding sea took their name. Later, due to a dispute between the island's inhabitants and the Athenians, Poseidon came to the aid of his sons, but Zeus, being the father of Athena, who led the Athenians, also came to their aid. A violent and terrible battle ensued, in which all the fighters on both sides perished. Zeus, angered by the death of his sons, unleashed an earthquake and a flood that submerged the island and made it disappear into the sea.
Now that we've reached this point, we're really curious to hear your opinion. Write in the comments what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to support our work by subscribing to the channel. Until the next story.